Welcome to the Standing Stone podcast. I'm your host, Charles. Kat and I sat down with Ray and Emily Julin to talk about our experiences with the NAVHDA Apprentice program and why we all became judges and apprentices. This conversation is our opinion about our personal experiences with the Apprentice program and not that of the Executive Council or of the Judging and Testing Committee. If you want more information on the NAVHDA Apprentice program, please go to navhda.org and click on the Apprentice Judge Program link. The largest supporter of everything we do at Standing Stone is our Patreons. If you're interested in supporting us, please go to patreon.com/Standing Stone Kennels. Also, please like, rate, comment, and subscribe on whatever platform you enjoy listening to us on.
So we're going to have a brief conversation about the NAVHDA Apprenticeship Program, and you two are both recent members of. So just tell me what made you want to join the program. It takes quite a bit to get started in the program. So, but once you got the prerequisites done, Aims and Rules Clinic and a utility dog and some letters of recommendation, what made you want to start?
You want to go first?
Sure. So for me, it was I had just become a judge in the North American Hunting Retriever Association, NARA. So kind of like the NAVHDA version, but in retriever world. And so I knew I liked doing that, and having the utility prize on the dog, and, we're not people who are going to have, 20 dogs just testing. It's kind of like, what's next to do, to continue to be active in the organization and giving back. So also I think just all of the suggesting from you,
I do what I can.
Definitely pushed me that way and made me think, made me believe that I could do it, that I'd be good at it, and that I'd have fun with it.
Yeah, I think similar. I think for us, since you moved away, there's no judges in our chapter anymore, and I think it's important and useful to have judges in the chapter, and definitely on training days and things like that. I think it's been useful to know a little bit more about the rules and to help people in the club. And then I'm treasurer of the club too, and so it feels like, the more I can get involved is the better. And like Emily said, we don't have 20 dogs, and so once we run a dog and get it, we have a UT1, and I'm training an invite dog now. But once you kind of get to that point and you don't have another puppy coming and you still want to be involved, and it's still really fun to go see dogs work, and it's a good way to still be in the field and still be a part of NAVHDA without actually, having to spend the money myself to go do it. Although in the apprentice program you do that, but I think
Eventually you'll get to go watch a bunch of dogs.
Yeah.
At least your travel paid
it's
for.
an investment, right? To be able to do that. So.
And so you guys have each run. So something I think is a little bit of a misconception is people feel like you have to be this full-time dog trainer and see all these dogs and train all these dogs and do this stuff. But you guys have each run your own dog. You have a Draught, and Ray has a short-haired puppy from us. And those are the dogs that you've trained and ran. So I know some people have the feeling that they need to see, train all these dogs and be this crazy involved. While you two are very involved in the chapter, volunteering and doing all of that stuff, it isn't something that you have to have run your, 40th utility dog or tested your 40th utility dog before you can decide that you somehow can join the program.
For me, in all honesty, it was I wanted to have a better understanding of the expectation and the standard that I was being judged against when I went and ran my own dogs, because you can read the rules in Ames book, you can go to a clinic, and then you can still make lots of mistakes because, you might only do one dog. So it was, for me, not only about giving back, of course. We are very busy, so that gets harder and harder, especially with two little boys taking up extra time. But I definitely wanted a better understanding of what I needed to do to have my dogs as prepared as possible for the tests.
Yeah, for me, it all started with me is that I had, before my very first test, I went to and watched a test, and those judges specifically stayed after the test on a Sunday. The test secretary gave me 3 chucker to put down. The judges went out, walked with me, gave me tips, told me what they saw, and said, go get it. And I was like, I've never been involved in an organization that, like a testing dog event, that was that willing to help, and that was like, we really want you to do good. Let me know how you did. Here's my contact information. So that was what kind of kickstarted it for me. Like, I could be that person, hopefully, for somebody down the road, because look at where I am now. So one thing too is, so you guys each have your utility dogs. You've both gotten prize ones now, so congratulations, because I think all four of us know how hard that is.
and I think being a apprentice and volunteering made those prize ones possible, because I know when we give commands now, it's like, when you can give the command and when you can take that 3 and be happy. That's been, I think, really useful to me too.
So learning to read dogs, but now you've each had a dog, and obviously you've been at training days and stuff. So one thing that we talked about briefly was hunting. So how do you guys feel like your hunting experiences? Because both of you bird hunt a lot. So and just kind of go over those experiences and how you feel like the hunting helped you become, as you became an NAVHDA apprentice, how it helped you to read dogs and to understand what dogs are doing, and going into it with more experience than one utility dog each would make people think.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to start? I mean,
Sure. So I think just being a part of the NAVHDA world too just opened up so many more hunting opportunities and opportunities to hunt with so many other people. Like, you meet this person and hunt with them, and then their friend you hunt with, and then their friend you hunt with, and it just kind of spirals. And so you just end up hunting behind so many other dogs and even different breeds. Like, never knew I would have hunted behind a Griff or even some Cockers this last year. That was my first time hunting behind those.
Yeah, and I grew up with a lab, and so that was her first dog, was a lab, and I think having experience with any type of dog coming in really helped to, like, reading the dog in the field when he starts to get birdie and understanding what scent he's picking up. That sort of stuff has really helped. And then, to Emily's point, that getting in the field with a bunch of different people and different dogs and watching them work is, it's not just your dog that you get to see. You get to see so many other types of dogs, and so that's really helped. And then volunteering at NAVHDA events and gunning and those sorts of things. It's not just hunting; it's gunning at NAVHDA tests, where you really get to see, a variety of different types of dogs work. But all of those things are really, kind of create your background, I'd say, to become a better judge and a better apprentice. So.
And I think there's even people who come to the NAVHDA from not the hunting world, more from like obedience or therapy dogs, and they even have experiences that they don't realize how applicable they can be when it comes to reading dogs. Like, even though the skills aren't exactly the same, they're much more easily transferred.
Yeah, I definitely think something that I noticed that helped me quite a bit was the same thing as going out and hunting with friends, and you've never seen this dog on the ground, and then you just realize you're picking up the cues that, oh, that dog's tracking, or, oh, that dog definitely is smelling a bird right now but doesn't quite know where it is. And all of those little subtle cues you see day in and day out when you're going bird hunting. And I feel like that helped me a ton to, I was in a similar place when I became an apprentice. I had more dogs because I owned 6 of them. So, but still, it's not like I had run, 20 utility dogs. I think I'd run probably 5 or 6 maybe total. But again, all the days on the ground, I am more than willing to travel and go meet people and do the same thing. And I did a lot of that through NAVHDA. And so I think that experience really, really helps quite a bit to get you to start reading a dog and start understanding those things. You were able to do it more from the...
Yeah, I have a completely different, standpoint and experience that way, because the dogs came to us, from a training standpoint. And no, not every dog that came to the kennel was prepping for any level of testing. Some of them are just to be obedient family dogs with the ability to go hunting, but you still learn to read a ton from those dogs, whether they're ready to, for more, how they're figuring out their noses, but definitely a different perspective, because I came about my experience reading dogs differently. Definitely go hunting a lot, but in a more our own dog kind of way. Pretty much all the times we go hunting, it's with our dogs or, your dogs, people that we're really closely associated with through the kennel.
Yeah, which makes it a little bit easier because you kind of know
I know the dogs.
personalities
and
a little bit.
And the people a lot more. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm even gotten to the point where I've had a coworker be like, "Hey, can you help my husband with their new puppy that they got?" And so we helped him out last year, and now he's like, "Hey, will you help my friend out with his new puppy that he got this summer?" And like, I feel like, the first few times out in the field, like now I'm even able to read his dog better than he can because I, just have so much more experience with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Beyond, now that you are into apprenticing, now you're looking at them, now you're actually paying attention to all of those very small nuances. So now when you are looking at and helping other people's dogs, you're like, oh, I saw that, or I noticed that thing, because part of that brain just gets switched on and it's hard to turn off even when you're just helping somebody with their puppy. You definitely can help people to be encouraging, and you can say like, hey, there's something really good here, you need to continue, and then hopefully get them to run a test and then utility, and then I'll talk them into becoming an apprentice judge.
Right.
I think I've definitely learned how much harder people are on their dogs, and maybe how much harder I am on my own dogs than you realize when you start reading their dogs and they think something terrible is happening, and you realize no, that's good. Like, it's a puppy, it's doing what you want it to do. You kind of interpret that different, and I think that's been encouraging too. To at least with Russ and some of her friends from work, it's been good.
I think part of that, to your point, is the understanding that you have now, that we have now, of the test, of the rules, what the true standard is, that most people coming in with their first puppy or their first utility dog, they probably haven't been to a rules and names clinic. They probably haven't been maybe even to a test to volunteer or see how it's run. And so they're coming in going, I have a general idea. They may not have even read the rules and names book. They might have watched the really cool NAVHDA video of the NA test, and that's their experience with prepping. And so they're like, I still don't really have the best understanding of what they're looking for. And so they're like, oh my gosh, my puppy didn't hold point long enough. We didn't get a good pointing score. But they don't really know what we're looking at. And so that was a big reason why I wanted to become apprentice and become a judge, is so that I could be like, okay, I truly know what is being looked for, what is being asked for, and then to help teach people and help share that experience like you guys are doing with your friends' puppies and stuff,
Right.
being like, hey, I can help you here.
Yeah, and it's funny because like currently, like the one, he has no interest in testing, but I find myself even using the NAVHDA language, like telling him like what good things his dog is doing, like, your dog had great search, and like, yeah, her cooperation is still really good, and like, just talking about her search, her cooperation, her desire, when like our main goal is just to get her to point, but when he's just all bummed because she hasn't pointed yet, but I'm like, look at all these other good things that are happening, like I know that point is coming, and it did. It took like the second time out and the dog pointed, like it was fine.
Yeah, sometimes they don't even realize that the mistakes they are making are mistakes they're supposed to make.
Yep.
It's part of their learning is to make those mistakes. And so sometimes you get to see that when you're judging in a test. You get to see somebody that comes up and, nope, my dog's never seen a bird before. And every once in a while you see those puppies and
the light bulb turns on.
It takes a bump. What was that? I didn't even know that was there, to a chase, to
now I can point this
all
thing.
of a sudden that thing gets away from me and now I stop and point it.
That natural instinct coming in is
that
really
natural
cool
ability.
to see. Yeah, natural ability. But that's really cool what you mentioned. Like, though they may not have any testing goals, and that's completely fine, you're still able to apply what you're learning through the apprentice program to that dog in a hunting scenario, because that's what the tests are about. They're
Right.
about getting these dogs ready to, yes, do well at the test, but also they're going to be great hunting dogs, versatile hunting dogs. And even if somebody never goes and takes their puppy and hunt
Right.
tests them, they're still having a purposeful search, figuring out how to point
Right.
birds.
It's amazing how universal the language is that NAVHDA's decided to use. Like, it really does apply to all aspects of hunting, not just the testing portion.
Yeah, it works really, really well. It is surprising, and the people that wrote all that stuff kind of knew what they were talking about.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think everybody comes into a utility test and everybody wants to get a prize one, and I think I always had the mindset before that, a prize one, I need to get a prize one, and then now after apprenticing, and you hear judges say any dog that passes a utility test is a great hunting dog. That's absolutely true. I think that, and it made it more apparent in my mind after seeing all these dogs run that, one of my favorite dogs that I've seen as an apprentice was a no prize dog. And I was like, that dog is going to be amazing. Like it's not there yet. Right. But you can see a lot more potential in dogs, I think.
Well, and from your hunting experience, you watch these dogs run through utility or even NA, and you're like, those are dogs I would want to hunt behind.
Yep.
Right. For
Yeah,
sure.
you start seeing those traits that are going to work. Like you see that puppy that points and is cautious and works in and pinpoints that bird, and you see those things. You're like, that's going to be a good pheasant dog. You pick up on those little things that you saw during hunting that gets you really excited and pumped when you see those little puppies figure out, especially puppies. It's so much fun to watch a puppy figure out a running bird, like a chucker that's moving or something. It's a lot of fun.
When these utility dogs, so this is a saying that Ethan says all the time, which is actually really funny. Be like, yeah, that dog would make my truck.
Mm-hmm.
So we go hunting, guiding, things like that, and may not be a prize one dog, but that dog would be an asset to have on the ground. They're going to find birds. They're going to make retrieves. They're going to be cooperative in the field. You're not going to be running around yelling at them all day long. And those are the dogs that I want to go hunting behind.
Yep.
Yeah, and I always, to the person that you help that doesn't have testing goals, is I'll still tell people all the time, just come to a training day. Even if you don't want to test, just come to a training day. You'll get some other people that can help you. You'll get access to birds. Join the club, help out, and you will learn more, and your dog will be better for it. And you will be too, as a person that gets to see other hunting dogs. Because if you only ever see your dog, like we're talking about all of these experiences, how much they've helped us. Well, you can start that process by going to a training day and walking along and watching 5 different breeds, point birds and work birds, and see how they're doing it differently, and see how each dog acknowledges scent differently. And it definitely will help in the long run as you get other dogs, other puppies, and start hunting with other people. So it's definitely
Even if you join, even if you do those things and you still never test your
Yep.
dog, you still never do the apprentice program, the knowledge that you're going to gain, the experiences from going to those things that you're going to gain is going to make you a better handler, better trainer. Your dog's going to be better for it. So it's a huge benefit all the way around.
And it helps to get, even if it's just somebody walking along that says, hey, you have a nice dog, or hey, you might want to work on this. It also gives a third-party opinion that, without necessarily going through the stress for some people, for everybody, I think, of running a dog in a test.
And we all know that opinions are liked. So take them with a grain of salt, and not every single opinion you get, even if it's at a training day, even if it's at a test,
Right.
is, the gospel. So you may want to take that and percolate on it, get another perspective, somebody you definitely train with and trust, and be like, hey, I was told this. What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it exactly jives with how I've been training. So
Yep.
there's more than one way to skin a cat.
For sure.
And goals change too. Like I would say when we first started, we just wanted the goal basically of having awesome hunting dogs, getting that, NA prize on the puppy at first was the first goal. And then the goals just kind of grew and grew. And so we were, training with Charles when he was going through the apprentice program. And at that time, it was like not even on my radar that I might one day even do that. So it's been kind of interesting just to see how that's kind of developed.
Yeah, that's like Charles going through the acting senior program right
Yeah.
now. And he's talking about all these things and like someday wanting to, judge at the invitational. And I'm like, that just sounds daunting. So at my stage in my life and everything else, I'm like, nope, hard pass for me right now. I'm going to stick with where I'm at. I'm comfortable there. And sometimes, being comfortable is fine. Being challenged is awesome, but I'm not ready to be challenged.
And I think too, I was pushed to go into the acting senior program, and not in a good way. It was like, hey, I've judged with you, you're ready. Just like with you guys and Desiree, and I'm like, hey, like I've trained with you, I've watched you guys work with dogs, I've seen you at training days, like you guys would be an asset. Go do this. Here, I will write you a letter. Please join the program.
I think it was a little more like, hey, do you have your application in yet?
Yeah,
I think
I'm
you
usually a
hounded
little
us a
more.
little
Hey,
bit.
is your
Yeah.
application in
Yeah.
yet?
I felt
Yeah.
guilty when I didn't have it in.
Yeah, every time I'd see it, hey, you turned that in yet? I checked the list. I didn't see Ray on there.
Yeah.
But sometimes it does take like that little bit of a bump, like
Right.
and along the way in the process too. It's like you get on those, you have those really good days where just things click and everything's working, and you're like, man, this is where I belong. And sometimes you just got to get pushed into those spots a little bit, and I think that's the same thing that happened with
or
me.
somebody else telling you like that they have the confidence in you, because
Right.
I know personally, like I lack confidence in those areas sometimes where I'm like, I'm fine where I'm at, but having somebody else say you're ready gives you that kind of motivation to be like, oh, I could do this.
Yeah. So if somebody's out there telling you, hey, like, you know, you would be good at this, just give it a shot. I mean, you can voluntarily withdraw. You don't have to, you know, get into it and go, oh, I have to stick through this whole thing now. You can decide it's not for you. But I think anybody that's a judge or heavily involved in NAVHDA that's telling you like, hey, you should need to enter this program, I think they see something in you that will definitely, you'll stick with the program, I think. So,
And I think the flip side of that too is if you're somebody trying to encourage someone to join the program, is be a little pushy, you know, hey, is your application in yet? Hey, is your application in yet? Don't just say it once and, you know, because, you know, they might be a little uncomfortable and need that prodding kind of more than just
and just as an added support system too. Like if Charles is saying, hey, I think you would be good at this, I'll write you that letter of recommendation. Or, hey, you know, I was an apprentice not too long ago. Mm-hmm. Here's some, you know, good tips and tricks for not getting into the program, but also like your first test, things like that to be prepared for, that you go in a little blind sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I try to, like, when even now, Christy Langston, I bug her all the time. Every time she's in the field, I'm like, what was your score on that? And she's like, I'm taking pictures. I'm like, I know, but what'd you have? Just trying to let people see. And I do that to you guys too. Like, would we do a training track or something? Like, what'd you think of that training track? And not that any number that we say, but it's just getting you thinking in that mindset and realizing, oh, I can do this. Like, it seems like such a daunting task. I mean, I can remember my very first opening remarks with my very first natural ability dog, and I was like, there's no way I could ever do what they're doing. There's no way. And then you just, as you get involved and do more and more and more, you realize that, like, hey, maybe I can do that. And I just think it takes a little bit of like, hey, you're good at it. Hey, think about it this way. Look at this. Think about it. And then you just start to see it click, and you're like, oh, yeah, I definitely can do it.
And so far, like, every judging team that I've worked with has, like, been very supportive and, like, clearly wanted me to succeed and, like, you know, had my best interest at heart. Like, never felt like anybody was, like, out to get me.
Yeah, I think every weekend that I've apprenticed has always been, I mean, I've always had fun in NAVHDA, and then I think every weekend that I've apprenticed and learned a little bit more, I always say, like, this was the most fun weekend I've had in NAVHDA. Like, this first apprentice assignment was the most fun I've had. Then I go to the next one, and I'm like, that one was more fun because I know a little bit more, I'm a little more comfortable, and now I've done a few weekends in a row, and it's been, you know, every time it just gets, you get more comfortable, and it gets more and more fun. So that's been cool to be a part of too, and just be, you know, learning that and having that, you know, other side of experiences with NAVHDA that, you know, aside from running the dogs. So.
And you're talking about judging teams, and that's something that not everybody knows. The judging team can also include 2 apprentices, and I and Charles got to apprentice together quite a bit during.
At least, I bet half of them.
Probably, especially the second half of the year. We were going to a lot of the same tests, but even before that, I would have, you know, another apprentice from somewhere else, and you learn a lot from your other apprentice because they may have, you know, a different way that they're taking notes, or their scorecards look a little bit differently, and you can be like, hey, I want to pull that piece. It's going to apply in my brain really well to help me remember this dog. And so you're picking up little pieces that make remembering those dogs and taking those notes and having your scorecard look, you know, represent what the picture of the day was really nice. So I loved when we got to apprentice with other apprentices, and not just your judging team, because once you kind of hit that point, their scorecards look a little different than ours.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think, and you two, obviously being married, you know, you guys can talk about things that you saw, and I know we did it a lot on the way home from
And we're
tests.
not married,
We're
but
not.
you know, we hang out a lot.
Yeah, but we would do it on the way home a lot from tests. We would talk about, even if we were on different teams, we would talk about what we saw and talk through stuff. And I had, you know, some judges in Heartland that I reached out to that I was able to talk to, and obviously, you know, when Desiree was here, I don't know how many, we would just be talking about something totally random, and then all of a sudden we just talked about NAVHDA judging for an hour somehow. So it just becomes a part of the conversation, and that's a lot of fun too, to get to, you know, it just adds another thing that you can talk to a friend group about, and you guys can talk about, your judging on the way home gives you something to keep you awake.
Sometimes
Yeah.
I'm mostly like, Charles, you're going to drive. I'm going to fall asleep.
Yeah.
But I think, Ray, you were saying how like every test gets more and more fun and a little easier because you're more comfortable. And there was definitely times where I don't want to say I got tired of the easy, but like the days where you watched 10 ANA puppies all rock it. It was like, that's awesome, and you feel so great for those puppies, but I was like, I'm not learning enough at those tests in the Apprentice program. I was like, I need those difficult days where you kind of, as a judging team, are looking at each other going, what just happened? How are we going to apply that to a scorecard? And those are the ones that I liked because those were really challenging. For sure. And you had to think. And it got, like, I don't want to say too easy with the, 10 easy NA puppies, but you got so comfortable, and it was so, like by the book. Like it was like, well, we know what that puppy got.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's not like that they're necessarily easy, but you're far enough along in understanding the system that a really good puppy is pretty easy to spot, and it doesn't take much. It's like, fun to watch.
Yeah, it's fun, and you're like so happy for that puppy and that handler, especially if it's their first dog and all of that. But it's like you start learning less from those experiences because you're like, that's what a 112 looks like.
It's easy to pick out a 4.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's
or a 0. Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Those more challenging dogs where you're like, I don't know what this is going to end up being for the day is where I felt like those were the conversations. Those were the things that you could share and lots of learning.
Yeah. And those are the ones that you chew on. And like I was able to reach out to my mentor for some of that, and I could talk to other judges of the chapters about things that I saw and like kind of get a couple perspectives. Now, granted, I'm giving them what I saw from my perspective, but it gives you a way to kind of understand more of what you saw, and it's definitely good to have somebody to bounce off of, and that's why you have a mentor. So if you don't have that person within your
circle,
club, or your friend group or whatever, that you do have that mentor that you can email or call up, or I'm sure anybody on the judging and testing committee would answer a question if you had it, but mentor would be your first stop.
I think even having just, the other apprentice to talk to, like sometimes we'll, after the fact, kind of challenge each other, and he'll be like, wait, you said this happened and you gave this score? That doesn't sound right to me. So then I'll either have to think through and be like, oh, right, I missed this in my description, or be like, maybe.
Or like, that's why we have, a 3-judge team is you look down to write a note, what just happened? And then you have to be like, hey, what did you just see there? And you have to take, their explanation and then what you've seen throughout the day. And sometimes that happens. You're like, I literally just stepped in a hole and about broke my ankle and missed exactly the moment of this bird flushing.
Yeah, looked up and the bird was in the air.
How did that happen? How did we get the bird in the air? And so relying on your judging team, the apprentices, and everybody to see the complete picture sometimes. And that's why it's so nice to have all those eyes out there.
Yeah, to have an extra 2 apprentices helps too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes it feels like, oh my gosh, there's so many people in the field for this one dog. But
and
doesn't hurt.
Then there's times where I was at one apprentice test, 3 judges, 2 apprentice, and we all missed the flush. So there's 5 of us that all missed it. So even with that many eyes, you can still miss things.
Yeah, for sure. So you guys want to go into briefly a little bit of something to touch on is some like judge work-life balance kind of stuff. So Emily, you're a teacher. Ray, you work for John Deere. You have a job that's pretty demanding with traveling. You have a job that you basically can't be gone from. So just thought if you wanted to touch base on, you guys are
you guys are married,
right? So and you're married, so you have this whole
dynamic
thing. I think you guys didn't see each other for a month or something once. So
June was pretty minimal.
I spent 3 or 4 days at home this past month. So actually apprenticing and going to tests is when I get to see her, I think. So
yeah,
we've only actually apprenticed 1 day together.
Which I will say that you guys do have permission to apprentice together as a couple. Yep. Judges cannot do that, but they do allow apprentices because it helps with travel
mitigating
and life
expensing
and everything that you can apprentice. As long as you 2 play nice.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. Yeah.
It worked.
So, so for me, being a teacher, like I get 2 personal days a year, so I can't really be taking all these Fridays off. And so I think I did my first apprentice while school was still in, but it was one that was local, so I was able to just drive there Friday night and, you know, get back at a reasonable time Sunday evening. But otherwise, I'm mostly just focusing on ones that I can do during the summer, either that or are within, you know, a 3-4 hour drive during the school year. And fortunately, there's enough chapters that are, so we're based out of Des Moines, so there's a good number of chapters that are in that 3, 4, 5 hour drive that, you know, you can make that happen. And so I do have a good number of options.
Yeah, and for me, with all the travel I do, I find myself just looking up where I'm traveling and go, is there a tester somewhere nearby that I can drive to for the weekend? Because I don't usually work weekends if I'm in the field or I'm traveling for 2-3 weeks at a time. So I mean, that worked out a few weeks ago. I was able to travel to a test that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to go to because I was in the area. So I just make it work with wherever I'm at. For work-life balance, I always kind of say, like, you have to take the time because your job will take all the time that you want it to, that you want to give it, right? So I make sure to take time to go do some things that I want to do when I'm traveling. And so this has been one of the things I've been able to add in and throw my judging belt in my suitcase and make sure you don't carry any blanks with you. The TSA gets mad about those, but yeah, you throw your stuff in and then just if it works out. And so that's, you know, one of the things as an apprentice is you have to find your own tests to go apprentice at. You reach out to the test secretaries, and so the NAVHDA test calendar, go look where I'm at that weekend and find the secretary and reach out, and and it works out.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time online looking at the NAVHDA test calendar. Yeah, that's the main way.
Which ones can I fit in here?
Yeah, you get to learn to use the website pretty good, the NAVHDA website.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at finding tests and secretaries and reaching out. And have you guys had any issues getting into tests? I think NAVHDA's at a record high for apprentices right now.
Yeah, that's what they said at the annual meeting this year.
Yeah.
I think there's only been one test that I reached out to that was full, and then we actually ended up, I think that was the Wisconsin test. We ended up not going to that test and ended up going to a different test, and it worked out better. It was a 3-day test.
And it was a double.
So we were able to split.
Well, the Saturday, Sunday was a double, so it was that Friday was the only time we apprenticed together. Yeah. So like sometimes when when we're both available, like, to apprentice that weekend, just one of us will send the email and say, how many, do you by any chance have 2 spots, rather than us both sending, and CC the other one, because it's silly for us both to send an email.
And then it could get confusing a little bit to test secretaries are like, well, I just had one apprentice, and then I've got another apprentice asking about a test, and their names are kind of similar.
Yeah, or maybe just see the last name.
What's going on?
And our NAVHDA number is one off from each other, so that's really
handy so too. It makes it a little less probably complex and confusing for the test secretaries, which are probably already fielding a fair number of emails about the test.
Yeah, so. Especially depending on if they're in one of those chapters where they do judges travel and the birds and the lunches, and and then now they have this apprentice emailing saying, hey, can I get in? And then immediately 30 seconds later, another one, hey, can I get in
and then they're like, oh, that's a repeat, delete. And then they didn't even realize it was 2 different people. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you haven't had any trouble getting in tests, what you need to?
No, I think even when I was asking for both of us, they were like, well, I've got 1 spot. And so, like, at the one point before I had found the one with 2 spots, I had found 2 tests with 1 spot each, and I was like, well, I guess we'll just divide up this weekend. But then, the other one came through, and so, but we aren't necessarily trying to apprentice together a whole lot either. So, like, I think it's the first week in August where we could both have apprenticed at our home chapter, but I've already apprenticed there once, and so we decided. But there's another test that same weekend that's a reasonable driving distance where we know people have connections, and so it's like, well, why don't you just stay at that one and I'll go to the other one, and then it just becomes, okay, who takes dogs?
Yeah. And let's be honest, we have quite a few home chapters, it feels like now. So
they definitely do start to feel like home a little bit when you start apprenticing at their spring test and their fall test, and you get to know people pretty well. So yeah, you guys have to haul dogs with you as well. So you guys, decide who takes dogs. Granted, if Ray's flying from Canada to Colorado and back to Canada,
He's probably
he
not
doesn't
got
have
the
dogs.
Yeah, usually there's a pretty like logical. So like when he stays at the home chapter, he's doing dogs. Like I'm
'Cause he's
not
at
hauling.
home.
I'm not hauling them to Nebraska with me.
Right.
But
Would you
like
though?
no. But like my first apprentice, he was out of town for work, and so I had to take the dogs with me anyways. And so just I guess from a logistics standpoint too, like it wasn't ideal, but like it's totally doable. And it was a chapter where I didn't really know anyone. So like on lunch I let him out, and I just said to the senior, hey, do I have time to go? And he was like, oh yes, absolutely, do what you need to, take care of your dogs. Like, yeah, we want to keep the day moving, but like I'm not gonna torture your dogs.
And I think it's fairly common that judges. I mean, it's every
Pretty
other
common.
test or every test that
Somebody's got a
somebody
dog.
has a dog and they
Yeah.
need to let them out. So
We've been pretty lucky. The other ones we've been to, like we've known people who, gosh, some of them haven't even, like, we haven't had to ask them. They've been like, hey, it's fine if I take your dogs out, right? They won't like be weirded out by me. And I'm like, oh, what? Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. So I think in general, like most chapters, like have people who understand that and, want to help you out too. Like everybody's been so grateful for us coming and apprenticing. And I'm like, I feel like you guys are the ones doing me a favor right now, but okay.
Well, because I know from experience, those chapters are looking at you guys as a kind of investment as well, because they're like, hey, when these guys get approved and they're judges, then and we've made this chapter like home and very welcoming, and I call Ray or I call Emily to say, hey, can one of you guys judge for us this weekend? And you have that option, or you have another option that you'd maybe have to drive farther or don't necessarily know the people, that you're like, sure, you guys were great to me while I apprenticed, I'm happy to come back. So they look at that, because chapters are always looking for judges and always struggling to get judges.
Big
and
time.
I like some test secretaries send these like heartfelt emails where they're
know.
like, we're gonna have to cancel our test if we can't get one more judge because of this, and we're a new chapter and we didn't know that we had to prepare this far in advance, and now we can't get anybody. And I'm just like, I can't. I literally am like double booked this weekend. I can't. And
I'm
like,
already,
oh.
I already
I'm
did
like,
2
Charles,
of those. Yeah.
can you take this one? I feel
It's
so
funny.
bad.
Yeah, Kat will text it to me. Hey, they really need somebody. I'm like, I'm already busy too.
So so they look at it as a form of investment too, and thinking for their future, needing some help.
I've apprenticed a couple more weekends than Emily because it's worked out better for me on some of these weekends. But as somebody who's an engineer by trade, going in somewhere is a little uncomfortable for me sometimes. And everybody's always, they want you there. It just makes it so easy and so nice to show up somewhere. Everybody has a common mindset around something, and you're immediately friends with everybody, it feels like. That's been a cool thing too.
I mean, it was your last test in Colorado where you went, you didn't really know anybody.
I knew
you?
0 people
And
there.
that was, again, he came out of it, was like, that was the best weekend ever.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it definitely, as you get more comfortable and get used to the whole process, and then you are with like-minded people. It's amazing how you can show up at an NAVHDA test and you're just like, these people we're all like-minded.
They get me, right?
I mean,
they get it.
I know I've told this story, and obviously not on podcast, but people have heard it. Is I took a friend to an AKC test, and when the test was wrapping up, it was a double, and it was on Saturday, and he's like, "Oh, where's everybody hang out? At the end of the test, like I ran natural ability, and everybody was hanging out and congratulating." And I go, "Well, it's AKC. They don't really do that,
Not very many.
And
clubs
he's
do
like,
that.
"Well, what are they doing?" And there was like 12 people around a camper, all drinking beer and talking, and we went over there, and I was like, "Wow, you guys all ran dogs?" Oh yeah, I was running master, I was running senior, and we start talking, and I realized it's the Illinois NAVHDA chapter, and they got together as a chapter and decided to go run dogs at the AKC test, and they're all there. It's like you can just spot each other, can just find each other, and it's a lot of fun. It's also amazing as you apprentice more and as you become a judge and see more how similar all the chapters tend to be. All of that support and everything. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's good people everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're all like-minded. They all want, to better their dogs and go hunting and
Yeah, for sure.
So everybody's like, hey, we're all on the same page here.
Yeah,
We all have a common goal.
It's a good way to meet new hunting friends too.
Oh yeah.
I picked up a good couple new hunting buddies out of this, so it's been pretty handy.
Well, and it's also fun too to go somewhere. You might go up to like Wisconsin or somewhere that maybe somebody hasn't had a lot of opportunities on pheasants, and you can be like, hey, come down. You can stay with me. I mean, you guys have had Dono came and stayed with you and trained.
Yep.
It's crazy how many people you meet and become friends with, all because of these crazy dogs.
Yep.
And judging.
And all those people have kennels in their basements for dogs. You never go to anybody's house and there's not stacks of kennels
like
anymore.
We have, It's like we had 5 extra dogs at our house this weekend, and we had kennels for everybody. And the dogs that needed a soft bed and a cot all had a soft bed and a cot, and the dogs that might need to get in a little smaller kennel, they were in a smaller kennel. So it always works out really well to be with those like-minded people.
Absolutely.
So you guys we're I don't know, I'd say halfway through testing season ish.
Yeah, maybe just a tish over halfway.
Yep. So gonna have a busy summer. You got what do you got?
July is pretty quiet just in general in NAVHDA.
Hot.
Yeah.
Very hot.
It's very hot.
So, first weekend in August, we're apprenticing separately. Back to that work-life balance thing, we went into this summer saying we need to make sure we commit and have at least one non-dog related thing. Especially our wedding anniversary is in the summer. So we have a trip plan that is not dog related. We'll bring the dogs, but just us, not testing. But then
and that was actually kind of tough because how many times did we talk about we're going up to northern Minnesota and it's well, there's a chapter up there and they're having a test that weekend.
And I shut that down, and because he was the first one who said we have to do something non-dog related, and then he was like, well, we could go to, and I'm like, no, we're not going to.
It becomes a slippery slope a little bit, and once you get approved, especially if you're at the annual meeting and it happens, then you have all these test secretaries hitting you up immediately, and you're like, I just got approved. Yeah, I'll do that one. Yeah, I'll do that one. Yeah, I'll do that one. And then you realize, oh my gosh, I booked way too many weekends.
Yeah.
And for me, that was right after our first baby was born, because I apprenticed while I was pregnant my entire pregnancy, which was a definite different balancing act. But then I was like, I've got a 6-month-old baby at home that I have already committed to all these tests. And it was hard to figure out that work-life balance, especially because, and all the chapters were great, but breastfeeding, have to find time to pump. So wasn't letting dogs out, but was having to sit in the truck for, 15, 20 minutes and take care of stuff. So definitely that balancing act. So good for you guys making that commitment to yourselves and each other to say, okay, we love what we do, but if you do too much of it, it can burn you out too. Yeah. So making time for yourselves separate.
September, I've got 1 or 2, and then I think
then
October,
school's back
I've got one.
up.
Yep. So then I'm pretty limited, and then too we bow hunt, and so in Iowa archery deer opens October 1st, and it's still pretty hot. So it's that first weekend or 2 in October, willing to sacrifice that to go apprentice, but then it's hunting season.
Yeah. I have 4 more tests that I'm going to apprentice. So again, Hawkeye in beginning of August, and then 3 other ones. For me, it's a little easier. I'm pretty flexible with my job to be able to work on the road or leave on a Friday and get there earlier, call in from meetings and things like that. So, and I'm pretty flexible on vacation days, so makes it easier. So, and then I have I'll have 2 in August, 1 at the 2 in August, and then take kind of a few week break. But I'm driving out to the Invitational, so I'll run on.
Hopefully, yes.
Crossing fingers that Lucy will be good. And so I'll run on Thursday, but I always volunteer every other day of the Invitational, so I'll be out there.
Another thing that I pushed you into doing that you did not want to do was gun at the Invitational.
I was a good water marshal. I felt good. I come from retriever world. I could run a water double pretty easy. And then of course you get me into gunning, and
I think that was harder than getting you to become an apprentice.
Yeah, well, I think when you gun, I feel like I have such a influence on what that dog does in the field. Like if I miss a bird, or which doesn't happen all that often, at least gunning, right? But
it does happen.
It does happen. But and when it happens, especially on your friend's dog, which has happened, you feel really terrible. And so
you start throwing bird belts around and removing bird belts from your wife.
yeah, and swapping out guns, and you feel like you really did something wrong. And then after you get to be an apprentice, then I realized, oh, none of that mattered, because like as a gunner before I was an apprentice, I definitely felt like all of that stuff mattered way more than as an apprentice, and seeing what the judging teams are talking about. I'm like, oh yeah, if you miss a bird, like we'll just go find another one, and
we'll get what we need.
Yeah, that bird didn't matter, and the judging teams do what they need to see what that dog needs to do to get the score that it deserves. Yeah.
And you came back from the gunning at the Invitational for the first time, like with all these stories about the great time you had too.
Oh yeah.
So like it's like
sometimes you got to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. Well, I love gunning. Like that was never the issue, but it was like gunning for other people's dogs, especially at the
highest
at the
level.
Invitational, where it's like, oh, like I really don't want to screw this up for people. But yeah, and different handlers have different. If it's somebody you don't know, they might misinterpret something, and they don't know what the judges are thinking. So that makes it, I was a little more sensitive to that than being an apprentice, I think. But being a gunner at the Invitational, and being a gunner for UT tests, and like you see so many things that dogs do, that definitely helped me become a better apprentice faster, I would say.
You're walking behind dogs, and
you're seeing everything.
You can't help but pay attention.
Yeah.
Or you sure better be, right?
Yeah. Well, but also paying attention more so, even like looking at them, like, is that dog getting, is that dog making game? Is there something going on? Like, man, that dog sure is behind us a lot.
They're part of the flushing sequence, basically.
Yep.
You see it up close and personal, even more than the judges get to at times.
And once in a while, a judge will walk up and say, hey, what did you see there, right? Like, they kind of want to confirm or deny sometimes what they saw, and that's gives you a little bit of confidence that they trust you too, and that sort of stuff helped me.
I've even had a judge. So I was running a dog, and the judge passed along a tip from the gunner because I hadn't even paid attention, and I'd thrown the bird butt first, and so it didn't fly. And so the gunner noticed it and was like, hey, tell her to throw it head first so that the bird actually flies.
Gotta love those nerves.
Right?
I think about that.
Yeah, it's always, that has been really interesting to me, to like having, like a lot of times as an apprentice, I feel like judges, sometimes they'll pick out like another judge that's running a test, and they'll be like, oh, you'll handle this person if your spiel doesn't go right or something. Like the guy knows what he's doing,
especially in the very beginning.
You'll and so to go handle like another judge that I'm like I'm gonna give you my spiel, but you know everything way better than me. But then to give them the spiel and then go handle them in the field and see how nervous the judge is.
Yeah,
it's like, wait, you know way more about this. Why are you nervous about this? And that's been interesting to see the nerves on, that I have.
People are, every time I go run a dog, people are surprised.
Every time. I'm so
like
nervous.
Pacing, and I am a nervous peer, so I
have
to go pee a lot.
I pee all day long.
And at Wyoming, I was running Thunder, and there was a gal there. It was her second time ever running utility. It had been a while, and she's like, "You're nervous?" I go, "I think I'm gonna throw up." Like, yeah, I'm very nervous. Like, and usually after the first bird, it gets better, but it did not with Thunder. I don't know why, but it's just, I don't know.
Vex was my only dog that I felt relaxed the whole time when I was running him. He was an easy dog, and relaxed. I was still very nervous, but like when I was running Nick's, there was no nerves being released. It was constant nerves. But I think it's all because we care. We worked really hard. We put tons of time, effort, money into getting these dogs ready. And, it's all culminating at, one day, whether it's a utility test. Yeah, you may get another opportunity to run that year, but it's all happening for that one day. It's, do or die right now. And you get nervous. And yes, your dogs can sense that, but we can't all but help it.
Yeah. And I think part of getting over that, not necessarily getting over the nerves, but using them and understanding it is, as you are going through the apprentice program and seeing dogs and seeing situations, and it almost gives you a little bit of a cheat code, because you've seen so many situations that you may have judged 50 utility dogs but only run 3. Well, you've seen a ton of things play out, like the whole big picture happen. And so you're able to take that experience and go, all right, I got to find another bird. Like I don't know what my score is because I'm not in that mindset, but I know that I said whoa a bunch on a couple birds. Right. I think I should find another
Need
one.
to go solidify that. Yeah.
Or like there was one utility test I ran where we had 3 finds in the first 8.5 minutes. And then after that, the judge was like, we are going way over this way. And I'm like, in my head at that point, I knew they are keeping me out of birds for 22 minutes. I think I'm sitting okay.
Yep. Which never happens.
You're still going to find another bird.
He found another bird, didn't he?
No.
Oh, he didn't?
No, he didn't. Yeah, that was a
sometimes
miracle.
You try and keep a dog out of trouble, and
we circled this one little food plot a large number of times.
I did not have the same success avoiding birds.
Yeah, it never seems to work for me.
I was 3 birds in, and I think we found 6 or 7 in my tests.
Most of the other times too, it's been let's go this way, boom, point.
Yeah.
But you also watch things play out, like you were saying, threw a bird backwards, right?
Yeah.
So you watch other handlers make mistakes, because we all do. I mean, my first test, I probably talked to Nix way more than I should have, because I didn't even realize I was doing it. You know, you get nervous. So you start watching that, and you're being aware of what other people are doing, and you take all that home and you put it in your little, bag of tricks to be like, I'm going to work on this. I need to make sure I do this. I need to think about this, so that you can prep and train and handle better.
Yep, and that's why I like training with people that are very heavily involved in NAVHDA, that are NAVHDA judges, NAVHDA apprentices, because they can go like, why do you keep doing that? I'm like, doing what? And like, well, every time the dog's coming back, you hold your hand out. I'm like, I am? And a lot of that can, then somebody can tell you that, and then you can fix it. And some of this, it's harder to do in the field, but like at the water, I'll record a lot. So that helps me to see some of those things. But in the field, it's really hard to record yourself through a whole sequence. Yeah. And so having people that are
You just got to make Annie follow you around with a
Annie is not afraid. No, she'll just tell me that I'm doing it wrong. It's fine. We can get into we didn't even talk about the two training together, because I can tell some stories.
I think apprenticing together has gone way better than training.
Way better than training.
And there's videos of that stuff too, for sure.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Those are deleted.
Oh, no. Charles sends those to us every once in a while. He's like, oh, this popped up on my memories. Remember this training scenario? And I'm like, yep.
Yep, I do remember that. So it's yeah, but you guys have to, obviously you're in a different space when you're apprenticing together. And it's some of the passion and the drive to like have your dog do it the way, and you're frustrated, and it's like, I'm handling this, and in training. That can be a whole nother topic for discussion, training as couples, because we all on here have done it.
Yeah, but that's definitely something to hit on, like as an apprentice, as part of a judging team. Like, we all have very alpha A personalities. Yep. That's why we're driven to do this and to be independent and go out and do it. But you also have to be able to play nice and get along, and not be confrontational when you're talking about what you saw and why you feel it should be this, because otherwise you're not going to do well in the apprentice program, because you're a team. You've all got to jive. Though you may have a different score than I do, we're all going to consensus at the end, and we need to get there nicely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you have a score, have good reasons for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, another neat thing about apprenticing is just meeting so many more judges. So the last utility test I ran with Ivor, I had actually apprenticed on Friday, then ran him on Saturday, and so I had met my handling judge the day before, and so because he knew me and I knew him, he knew how to handle my nerves and help keep me calm throughout the day. And so I think, as we go through this, we'll meet more and more judges, and it's like, oh yeah, I would love to have somebody who knows me handle me as a handler. Because, so like for our duck search, like he talked to me the whole time, which is what I needed, just to keep me distracted, because my dog was doing what he should be. But, if there is nothing happening, that time sure drags on real slow.
Longest 10 minutes in NAVHDA.
Yeah. Drags on real slow until it doesn't, and all of a sudden when it's going bad. So you guys have anything else you want to just anything you think people should know that are thinking about apprenticing, or anything specific that we didn't touch on about your guys' experience getting into apprenticing and just kind of getting started?
So my first thing would be, I think my biggest mistake from like my Ames and Rural Clinic, because that was, probably a full year before I actually apprenticed a test. I wish I had saved my scorecard from my Ames and Rules Clinic, because when I got to my first test, I was like, oh shoot, how do I organize my scorecard, and what types of things am I supposed to be putting where? And so then after that first one, I think I called you up, because my next one, my first one was just NA. And so then I had utility, my second one, and I called you up and I was like, let's get the video up, show me a scorecard, show me how you do it, so I at least have a starting point, because I basically, I remembered there was stuff I needed to do from the Ames and Rules Clinic, but I didn't remember what those specifics were, like those suggestions. So yeah, like, even before it, I was like, shoot, I wish I still had my scorecard, my sample scorecards from my Ames and Rules Clinic, just as a reference and a starting point.
Yeah, we both did another one during our apprenticeship.
Correct.
Yeah, I definitely think, too, going back in during, so like next year or even this year if you find another one, it really does kind of let you step back, too, again, so you don't feel quite as much pressure to be spot on with your score and everything, but it lets you step back and kind of learn. You learn more. It's a very good environment to teach in,
especially if you have a different clinic leader each
Mm-hmm.
time, because they're going to teach slightly differently, and you're going to learn slightly differently from each of them. So I'm glad that I went to two. But definitely like learning how to not only use the scorecard, the front of it, but what to put on the back of it.
Yep, and that's where
how that's going to apply to the front of it.
Yep, yeah. So like I'll admit, like my first day of apprenticing, my scorecards were terrible, because I just didn't have a plan going into it. And then, the second time I did, then I had a plan and it went way better.
Yeah. It takes, my first test was like, it just totally, I thought I was going to be able to just come in here and write the number down, and like third dog out of the gate, I went, I don't know what that is, and I don't know how to make that a number.
Yep.
It's like, what? It's just, so they just looked at me finally like, you just have to write something down.
Yep.
And I was not even close. But those situations, and then getting
learning.
comfortable, that's how you start learning, and then you start getting comfortable. And it's also, especially in the beginning, it's okay to not know. That's why the process is the way the process is. It's okay to not know and to be able to learn.
Yeah. Reach out to other judges or your mentor and ask questions. We have you, luckily, that we can reach out to, and that's been really beneficial. But
And Desiree.
But as you go through it and you meet new judging teams and you become friends with other judges and pinging things off their minds of how they think about things, to the point of going to a different handler's clinic is good, but going to different areas, like I didn't realize how much benefit I would get from going to an out of area that I had never been to this field before. The other places I've been are pretty familiar to me. Going to a place where I'd never been to the field before, I'd never been in the area before, and I was, handling the first handler out of the gate, and I'm like, where are the birds at? Walking around the field, and luckily the handler knew, where things were and were able to kind of handle themselves a little bit. But those sorts of things, like getting out of your home area, is really beneficial, I think, and it's part of the process. But
it's a requirement.
It's a requirement, but I don't think I understood how beneficial that was as a requirement until I went and did it.
And you kind of accidentally just fell into it sooner than you were planning to.
I was accidentally there.
Work
Yeah.
trip. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did a couple out of area for me.
Yeah.
I when I picked my like official, I want to go out of area, I went to Arizona. I was like, I want to go somewhere that is so different than anything I've ever seen.
And I went to Maine.
Yeah.
So very
Just
different.
So different. And you haven't done one yet, right,
No,
Emily?
No.
So you'll have. That's another fun thing you
I
get.
guess South Texas was considered out of area back. I don't remember what the new areas are, but
Yeah.
I went into this year being like, I've got so many other things to figure out this year. I don't need to add figuring out of area on top of it. I will plan to do that next year, and so I can use the winter to plan that.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fun part about being an apprentice is you get to pick. You get
Right.
you can go to Alaska, or you could go wherever you want to pay to go.
Yeah, wherever you want to pay to go. Exactly.
Yeah. So
But now there's the reimbursement.
it helps.
Oh, yeah.
I just teamed up
We
with
just
another
carpooled
apprentice.
as much as we
Yeah.
could.
But back to like the whole like advice for new apprentices too, is he kind of touched on it unintentionally, was if they don't give you the opportunity, ask for it, and if they give you the opportunity, take the opportunity to go with them and see the birds planted for that before that first dog.
Yep.
So that you're not going into the field blind.
Yep, that's pretty helpful.
Yeah,
and
you're going to get more out of it the more you put into it. So
Yep.
be proactive, ask questions, even if that's, hey, I saw this and I'm really not sure like how that relates here. Like talk me through it,
Yep.
ask for those clarifying things. Go watch the birds be planted. Check out what the duck search looks like if you can beforehand.
and don't stand back in the field and let the judging team do things. Be a part of the team. Go out there and help out. Grab birds for puppies bringing back birds that they shouldn't, and walk out and grab that bird, shove it in your bag, and keep it away from the judge that's handling that dog. Being a part of the team, I think, is better for learning and just better to be a better judge. To actually be a
being
part
more
of that team.
active.
Yeah, and I tried to do it when I was apprenticing. It just depended on work, but I would reach out to the senior and say, hey, what time, when are you going to get on the grounds? Because the senior is going to get there early to see everything and check out what's going on. And so I could try to be a part of that conversation as well and kind of get an idea into their thought process.
Yep.
And then also, they may go over with the bird planner where the birds are going then even.
Minimally ask the test secretary, because like I have a test secretary, they've told me in the past, like, oh, the judges will be here at this time, so you should probably, and I'm like, I'll get there at the same time as the judges.
Yep.
Yeah. I just usually couldn't get there the night before because of travel. Like I usually rolled in fairly late.
Yeah.
The night before, just between like other responsibilities, then getting to the test, and then getting home very late on Sundays.
But that's another good piece of advice is when you email to go apprentice at a test, ask who the judges are before you get there, so you do know who that senior is before you get there, and you can ask if they need any help in advance.
Yeah, because once you become approved, you get an email from International that tells you who the judges are and what groups and stuff. So it's a little more information. But as an apprentice,
you don't know.
The test secretary is the only one that knows that you're coming, and so they have to communicate that to the senior to let them know if they ask.
Yeah, so also like just don't be afraid to like be in communication with the test secretary, even about finding lodging. Like who knows, there might be somebody in the chapter who doesn't know you but might be willing to put you up.
Yep.
Yeah, if you ask, I would always ask where are the judges staying.
Yep.
And then that way too, sometimes if you have a car problem or you have anything, at least you're where the judges are, so you can get to the test still. I did that.
Follow them out to the test if you're not 100% sure where it is. But
yep.
One other thing we didn't hit on that I think is important is that we're evaluating dogs all day as judges and as apprentices, but then at the end of the day, the apprentices also get evaluated, and that can be nerve-wracking as well. Especially if you are a nervous person or uncomfortable being, in the spotlight for a little bit. And you're going to get an evaluation on how your day went over a number of things. And none of the judges are there to make you feel bad about yourself or to pick on you, even though your scores may feel like, man, that wasn't great. But it's to help you get better and to show you what you need to work on. So being able to take constructive criticism, I think, is also something to be prepared for, because Emily, you said, your first test didn't go great with the scorecards, so that probably reflected on your evaluation. Like, hey, you need some improvement here.
Yeah. And so I really try to go into that with a mentality of like looking like, ooh, what are they going to give me to improve on? And so then there is once or twice where the feedback was kind of vague, and so I was like, can you give me specific examples? So like if you can just try to like get that mentality of like, I want to come out of this with things to improve on, because you also have to do the write-up afterwards, and that is part of the write-up. So that's almost an opportunity to get your judges to do part of your write-up for you.
Be like, hey, I know I need to improve on this because the judges told me.
Yeah. And I've apprenticed. You had both of you as apprentices separately.
Yep.
And you both were very good about like, well, I want to know, like, why did I get an 8 here? Can you explain more about what this says on the back or anything like that? So, and in the acting senior program, you start handling more of those write-ups and evaluations and writing comments on the back for apprentices. And so I prefer it when apprentices would ask more, because it's going to help me as
Give them specifics as well.
well, and also as I get future apprentices to go, okay, well, I need to elaborate more.
And especially if you're going to be, if that's a Saturday and you're going to be with that same team tomorrow, like you want to know what exactly was it that they saw that they didn't like or that I should do better. Because if you can get them to tell you exactly what to do better tomorrow, it's real easy to do that better tomorrow and not be guessing at it.
Well, then you get a chance to apply it. And then instead of going, well, in a month when I apprentice next time, I better remember to do my cards differently or do something with my talk or handle my handler this way. Whereas if you can get that immediate feedback on Saturday and then apply it the next day and say, yep, that's exactly, I would hope that somebody would tell you midday, like, hey, you really took what we said and went with it. And they can immediately start using that. For me, like the longer breaks I took between my apprenticing, the harder it was. If I was doing them back to back with maybe a weekend off in between, it was better. And then same thing in July. It's hot. There's no test. And when I hit the first one in August, I was like, ooh, I'm a little rusty at this.
I know. I've been thinking about that, and I'm kind of nervous.
That's why mock tests are super helpful.
Yeah, go help out handlers at the mock test. So that, but by being able to apply that feedback right away the next day for sure is definitely something that.
There's a rules and aims clinic.
There is.
In Kansas in July.
There is.
And I'm judging a NARA test that weekend.
Okay. I was like, hey, you can kill two birds with one stone, not get rusty,
So
and go to a rules and aims
an
clinic.
extra component of balance is balancing the NARA, the NAVHDA, and just being a normal human being.
Yeah.
And training an invite dog, hopefully more.
Yeah.
Right.
And you have one for next year.
Next year for 2024, yeah.
Which the only way that works for you with your schedule, right?
Yeah, is to run in Iowa.
Because it's an hour from home.
And 40 minutes.
Yeah, and you don't have to take any time off work.
But what?
I still will. So there's
saving those personal days.
Yep. And I might get sick.
Yeah, the school district did not hear that.
They're probably not listening to this podcast.
You don't know. It's pretty popular. But one more, the other piece of advice, I guess, that reminded me of is you write your reports, your apprentice reports, but for myself, I've got, notes on my phone and then a notepad that, my little John Deere notepad or whatever that I write notes about stuff to myself. And then I've got a note card with, acronyms and things that I think, Charles, you gave it to me originally, and then I've tweaked it.
And I got it from somebody else.
It's been passed down through the generations of apprentices, I think, that if I had to fill out a scorecard, but I've tweaked that a bunch for myself to make it work for myself.
Which is what you should do.
Exactly. And but then I, as I go through a test, then I go, oh, I like, doing this a little bit better, and then I try to tweak it and change it, and I've changed my my clipboard notes a couple of times now that to improve it. So have note cards. If you don't remember stuff for your spiel for everything, it's no problem to make a note card and bring it out with you.
The other tip I think we both have realized is there's always a running order that the test secretary gives you. Save that.
Take a picture of it.
Because I found that that's an easy place for me to jot down here was the highlight from this dog, the highlight from this dog. And there was once where he was like, oh, shoot, do you have a copy of this running order? I'm like, no, that's the day when we were in separate fields. Yeah, we were at the same test, but I did not have your running order. Found it later, thankfully. But that's been my lifesaver for writing my reports because you have to turn in your cards. You don't get to keep them to look back and write your reports. So that's been my memory jogger and an easy place. You always have the running order. So that's my place to make my notes and that I get to keep to come back and write my report.
Yeah. When judges tell you at the end of a test that, after this, we're going to go put our cards away and get a beer, and we're not going to remember your dog. You truly don't remember those dogs.
There's so much information that you're trying to take in.
Yeah, that was one thing I noticed too, and I think you mentioned it on your first weekend too, that it was like, holy cow, because you stayed that Saturday night and then got up Sunday and drove. It was a Saturday test in Kansas, and you were like, you really don't remember it. I'm like, you really don't. Same thing that I noticed too. I was like, wow, they are not kidding. I really do not remember.
I genuinely thought I would just remember. I have a pretty good memory, I think, and I thought for sure I'll just remember all of this, no problem. And I think that hindered my cards too. I thought, oh no, I'll just remember this. No, You don't remember it?
I kind of had some sense of that from Nara because Nara is like way smaller than NAVHDA. So you literally, you know everybody, every handler, like, and their dog, and like you've seen them multiple times. And there was one time where like I judged, and then the next time I saw this guy, he was like, "Well, yeah, you failed my dog last time," and I was like, "Oh, did I? Oh, whoops." I mean, well, whoops to your dog because your dog failed himself probably, not me, but
Yeah.
don't even remember it.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for sharing some experiences and stuff with the NAVHDA apprentice program, and I look forward to seeing you guys. I know I'll see you both a couple more times, so
Yep.
I'm sure.
that'll be
We got
good.
uplands.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our conversation about our experiences with the NAVHDA Apprentice Program. Remember to like, rate, comment, and subscribe. Also, please check out our Patreon community at patreon.com/Standing Stone Kennels.